Here we go. Okay, so just a big thanks to everybody for taking time this Friday afternoon to join us. Thanks especially to our EA Post scholars and mentors from the fall. And thanks to all of you who are joining here to listen in. I think really the goal of this, there's a few goals in my mind. One is to kind of just celebrate the accomplishments of our scholars from the fall and give a big thanks to them and our mentors for really, sort of digging in. And for those of you who maybe aren't as familiar with the EA Post Scholars Program, this is part of our NSF funded project where we're doing a lot of faculty development workshops. And one of the things that we've been working on strategically over the years is to help all of our workshop participants really take what they've heard, learned, got excited about during workshops and implement it in the classroom for the maximal benefit of our students. And so this EA Post Scholars Program is one of the ways that we're doing that with this current NSF grant we have. And essentially, our scholars commit after they've done a workshop or done some other professional development with us to doing something different in their classroom the next time they teach the course. Often, as you'll hear today, that involves changing a lesson. Maybe it's a day or two of material, maybe a little more than that, and doing something different based on something they heard in the workshop. And it's sort of that, whenever I've done workshops myself and been a participant, I usually leave like charged up and like, oh, this is great. I'm gonna do all these things different. This is going to be really good. And then it's the night before that class and it's like, oh, you know what? It'd be really easy just to do what I did last time. And so this is a way to have a little bit of accountability and a little bit of support. And so our mentors who are here today, their names will be on the screen as we go around. They may or may not say anything today, but these are some of our workshop leaders, professional development leaders on the grant, and they sort of act in a kind of a mentoring capacity to say, hey, how can we help support you as you implement something new in your classroom? So with no further ado, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go around. We have some set questions that I will share with the group. We have a designated one or two of our scholars to be a first respondent on the question. But in the interest of having it really be a panel, if others want to weigh in about their experience or other scholars or mentors want to follow up, please don't hesitate to do so. My job is to keep us on time and make sure we're done here by the top of the next hour. If any of you are participating today or anyone else, scholars or mentors want to put stuff in the chat, we'll use the chat all as well. But during our sort of open panel discussion times, if you are a scholar or mentor, feel free to sort of unmute. Anyone else, put your questions in the chat. So as you see on the screen, we're here to talk about the positives, the challenges, and just the overall process of implementing something new content-wise or pedagogically or both in your fall 2024 stats class. Kind of talk about that, kind of see how that went and hear about that and share about that together. Some people here might be considering doing this program again. I'll have a link on the screen later at the end and we'll post it in the chat. We still have a couple spots left for this spring 2025 or winter, it's not really spring, but this semester, quarter, term, whatever scholars program that's kicking off right now. We'd love to have you join us or suggest that to some of your colleagues. So we've got those 6 questions. I'll put them up on the screen. As I mentioned, audience members, put your questions in the chat. As EA Post scholars, when you are up for presenting the first time you say something, if you could just introduce yourself briefly, a little bit of just, your institution, what course you taught, and then, talk a little bit about that topic you revised as you're sort of answering the question. All right, so that's hopefully enough, and we'll just jump in. And so this first question is, and I'll just set a little context here. So in the EA Post Scholars Program, what we have our scholars do is we've got a whole bunch of materials out there that members of our group have developed over time. And so what we ask our scholars to do is find one that looks interesting and then adapt it for use in their classroom. And sometimes those adaptations are more and sometimes they're less. So we'll start with you, Kate. What did you do to modify, or what kind of needs did you have to make this accessible for your students?
So, hi, my name's Catherine Kozak, or Kate Kozak. I teach at Coconino Community College in Flagstaff, Arizona. And yes, Arizona does get cold places like where I'm from. We're supposed to get snow this week, so we're really excited because we haven't had any snow. I'm also a past president of AMATIC, and so I've been involved in a lot of these things over the years. I did this in my Intro to Statistics course this semester, which I usually do teach with active learning, but I chose to do I always want to try to find different ways of teaching probability, because I find that just teaching probability is boring. So I ended up doing the one that had to do with the Monty Hall problem. And so I took that Monty Hall problem, and I've taught in the past where I just put it up on the board and we talked about the results. This time I took the materials and I actually modified the handout, because I don't give out handouts in my class, and I didn't want them to respond anything, because my active learning is very much just them responding and talking to their groups and not actually turning in things. So I modified it to where it would fit with the way I teach my class. It wasn't a lot of modification. I just took out putting information in, having them create a report. And then the other modification I did was I wanted to have my students play. So if you don't know the Monty Hall problem, there's two goats in a car, and the students have to play the game to see if they show, pick a card and then they show a goat, do they want to switch to one of the other cards? And what's the probability of that happening? And so I wanted the students to have two goats in a car, in their cards. And so I had to create cards that did that. And all I did was take cards that were two jacks and a queen or something like that. So I just put together cards to do that with. I didn't have pictures of coats and cars on my thing. And then I had my students play with it, and then they then went to the app and they used the app to see what would happen over a long time period. So I did use that app and I gave them access to it. And then from there, we then talked about the results and had my students talk about why they think they should in fact switch and what the probability would be. And then as a group, we talked about how do you actually calculate the probability, not through experimentation. So that's what we did. And it was really rewarding. And my students, I think, really learned a little bit about it and understood more about what was going on in the class and in that topic.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing that, Kate. Like you, when I took probability and learned probability the first time and taught probability at the beginning, also thought super boring and abstract. P of open parentheses, A symbol B. I mean, what is this? So yeah, I've long enjoyed that problem and others like it to get some simulation. Um, anyone else want to jump in? I don't see any questions or comments, so we'll maybe move on to question two, but we can always come back as we're going. All right, here's a question for Sonia. I think I saw Sonia here earlier. So the question is, tell us a little bit about your context and how you implemented it. What did it look like in terms of some of those active learning things? I know, Kate, you were talking about that. So kind of a little bit more on that in the context of your class, Sonia.
There we go.
There you go. Yes.
Yes. I just got out of class. So I did the project in two different classes. One was a stats class, and the other was a relatively new class we're teaching called Introduction to Applied Mathematics, which is still somewhat in flux. And I really did it in there more for practice for me. Although I said, well, you know, it's applied, so we're going to do it. But I really needed the practice, because I found that while I understood the ideas, talking about them, really making it part of my vocabulary was difficult. You know, the simulation based vocabulary, I was so used to the traditional way of talking about things. Anyway, so those were the two classes I implemented this in. And so I did the memory test activity. And so each class did the memory test, and we worked with the data from that class. Although I did have data from where the difference in means was quite extreme in case, there wasn't much different. So there were a few, I did this of several different, I think I've done it 5 times now. And so there were a few classes where the difference in means was not as extreme as I had hoped. So I did have a data set that I could show them where it was, so they could see what that looked like. So we collected data, we used that data. I did we walked through it step by step. I had a handout typed up that had places for them to record different calculations as we did them, so that we could kind of all stay together. But there was the opportunity for them to, consult with a neighbor if they had a question. In some of the classes, in the simulation, there is a shuffling of scores between the two groups, because the memory test problem, there's an easy to remember version of the sequence and a not so easy version. And Karen suggested that prior to the simulation, that the students do a hands-on activity where they write the scores on index cards and shuffle them. And I found that the groups where they did that prior to the simulation really understood it better. So I'm glad I did that. I did not have them do much pre-work, particularly in the class that was applied mathematics. That's more of an algebra, computational based class. So not much pre-work or follow-up on my part for the students, but in particular, that was mainly the only simulation activity we did. Actually, we did the Monty Hall problem earlier in the course, but it had been a number of weeks. So it's essentially not like we didn't do it because it had been so long, right? So not much pre or post work, but we did go through it together so that I could remind the students over and over what we were doing and why we were doing it, what we we're hoping to learn from it.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing. I really appreciate as you're talking, that making that connection about how when your students do the tactile simulation, it really does seem to reinforce things in a way. I know, and I always, think when I'm teaching the course, I can't do a tactile simulation maybe every day. It takes a while, right? But there are just those key times during the course where it's like we need to do that tactile thing again, like you said, so you kind of remember what simulation is about, and then you can kind of go back to it and reference it. So I'm glad you saw that work in your class that way. Any other questions or comments for Sonia or from others?
I
Yeah,
can make
go
a
ahead.
comment.
Yeah.
In my class, when I did these problems, my classroom is set up where we have whiteboards throughout the classroom so that the students can work on the whiteboards. And so they were collecting the data on the whiteboards of how many they had. And I asked them before we started, do you think you should switch? And they all came up with their answer, what they thought they should do and why they thought they should do it. And then they were really surprised in the end when it didn't happen, because they could look around the room and see it wasn't just them with that answer. Everybody else was getting the same answer. So it's nice to have whiteboards throughout the classroom to where you can do that,
Yeah.
if you have that
Yeah.
possibility.
Yeah. Excellent. Great idea. Great teaching tip. Go ahead, Laura.
Hi. Thank you for sharing. I've done the memory one too, where it's the one where they're given like random letters or letters that are like grouped in sensical kind of patterns, right? And we want to see who remembers the most. Did you tell your students beforehand what they would be doing, or did you just have them like try out the quiz, not knowing what it was, and then look at the data and then explain it? Because I've done it both ways, and I'm not sure what's best because I don't want them to try too hard and kind of mess up the data. But I don't know, at the same time, it seems like it might help them to take it a little bit more seriously. I don't know.
Well, I told them we would do something with the data, that we would look at it, but I didn't tell them what we would do with it. So hopefully they would take it seriously, because we would use it and do some sort of adventure with it. But I didn't tell them what specifically we would do with it.
Cool. It makes me think, another little thing I've done in the past. I know, Sonia, you mentioned that sometimes, if you do it in a bunch of sections, then maybe some sections there's not as big of a difference and things like that. And there's always pros and cons to, so sometimes we will I'll mix like this class's data with some other data I already have from some previous semester where there was like a really big difference. And so we'll just put your data together, and it kind of allows you to know that things are going to work out.
Okay.
So anyway, I mean, again, it has its pros and cons, but I find that then it kind of for me, it kind of maximizes, every student still is in the data set. They're just combined with a few others that help drive that effect a little bigger sometimes. And that helps, I think, Laura, sometimes even, right? Like, so some of those implementation questions don't shine maybe as strongly. But yeah, again, pros and cons on that. So good. Well, why don't we go on to our next question? This one will lead off with Grace. So after your introduction, what knowledge did the activity assume, and where did this kind of fit into your semester, your quarter?
Hi, I teach at Seminole State College in Florida. So it is the coldest time of the year. Like you're saying, -17, we're at 40 something, and I have the heater till 70. I'm like extremely cold in here. And even if you heard in Tallahassee, it snowed in Tallahassee, so they closed the school. Florida State has been closed this entire week. So my son is enjoying the snow, and they made a little snowman, and they gathered all the ice to make a tiny little snowman. So we got some snow in Florida. Well, yes, I did at Seminole State. We have almost 30,000 students. We offer general ed courses, and we have 11 bachelor degrees. And something we're so excited about this year, that we are the finalists for the Aspen Prize, which is, we're gonna know about it in April. I teach statistics and I teach calculus, and I'm the lead for the course. I'm the lead for statistics. And today I had the meeting with my team, and I told them about the EA post, and I pushed them. I did it twice already, and I hope I will have some faculty that would be interested in the program. This time I worked with Beth. She's amazing. All her stuff are very good. And I picked the sample mean, and we used the Gettysburg Address, where students have to select 10 random words. They find the mean. And then it was really interesting to me in the beginning. My goal was to actually talk about the random sampling and go to sampling distribution and apply the central limit theorem and see that the mean is the same as the population with the standard error and so on. But what was interesting to me, that I haven't done an activity with my students where they selected a sample and I told them, pick your 10 words. So they picked the 10 words based on maybe liking the words. So naturally, people are biased to select the words when they're looking at a text. And they came to the board, they put the mean, and the mean of the samples was around 7 words. And then we used the applet, and that's when they randomly selected. And they noticed how that sample mean was shifted to 4 words, and which matches the population. So it was, you know, it was a very nice review about how we pick the samples. And then we talked about what are the good methods to pick a sample, because you cannot simply run a study without having a good sampling method. Even though the activity, the main goal was, you know, the sampling distribution, but it was, I really enjoyed the sampling in the beginning and all the methods we talked about in the beginning of the chapter. I was amazed and fascinated by the jot form. I've never used it before, so I decided to use the jot form with Beth, and she was fabulous. I got a copy of the form. I got a free account, and I edited the way I teach. We use StatCrunch in our course. That's the technology we use. And I was able to edit some of the question that would be maybe with my voice, maybe the way we teach the words, and it went great. It went great. I mean, maybe we're gonna talk about some challenges later on, but I felt, you know, always it's the first time when you try something, as you said, Nathan, like when you go into the class, I'm like, oh, I wish, you know, the night before, like, I mean, I've done it before this way. Now I'm gonna change. So always the first time you feel like, okay, I tried it, I'm gonna tweak something, and of course I'm gonna use it again. I'm gonna tweak a little things. One of them that they're not used to use applets and simulation a lot in the classes, and I used jot form at the same time. So by the time they're figuring out a new technology that is cool and then jump into another technology, that was too much. Maybe next time I'll use it in a way where maybe I'll do a little bit more of in class, like here's the text, and then actually through your applets, Beth Rossman, where they get the words and automatically compute it. That was good too. They can use it, but maybe I'll step away from jot form for the moment. I don't know if I answered everything, but
That was great. That was wonderful. So any other panelists want to weigh in with sort of some of their related experiences or questions for Grace?
I'll ask a question. Several of you have talked about how starting with the hands-on simulation was really helpful before you turn anything over to the computer. And just what else do you think they need to know before they use some of these simulations? And I'm actually kind of hoping some of you will say not much, that this is something you can do early in the course. And I especially liked Grace's comments about, but keep in mind how many new technologies you're introducing to them at once.
So for my class, we actually use R in our course, R Studio, and so the applet was like really easy for them, and they had no issues with it whatsoever to use it. And even if we hadn't been using any technology, I don't see it would have been a problem, because it was just pushing buttons, and I gave them the link, and they were to get in there and work it and do it. So I think the applets were really easy for them, and so I didn't have any issue with that. And I actually am thinking of using it because I teach a liberal arts math class. And I'm thinking of using, that does probability, thinking of using the Monty Hall problem in that class, and they've had no technology really in that class. So I think it'd be easy for them to do it.
Yeah, in my situation, I think the fact that they were using jot form in the beginning and they were getting the words, and the words are automatically popping in and finding the mean. I will do next time, I will do just, you know, this one separate, and then they are used to use StatCrunch easily. And, you know, it's a very friendly software for them. If they want to go do the applet with me sharing a file, it will be a little bit different setup. But using softwares, that's what they do. They love using the software. But I would get more time on one thing at a time instead of jumping from one thing to another. It's a time constraint thing in the class too, when I want to cover everything in 45 minutes.
Maybe we'll move on to the next question, but if others want to jump in later with thoughts on Beth's question, can do that as well. Turn to Laura for the first response here. So after you introduce yourself and what you did, tell us a little bit about how this was different from what you and your students usually experience in the classroom.
All right, my name is Laura Peterson, and I teach Stat 1040 for Utah State, but I'm teaching it to high school students, so it's a dual enrollment course. And so this whole year has been way different. We moved a shift to being more simulation applet driven. And so that's been a big change overall in our statistics course. And so the activity that I used was a 2 proportion, and it was the robots study. And so with my course, most of the time they're involved in, a lecture and talking about material. And then we go to the simulation, the Rosman Chance simulations, and do a lot of simulation stuff. And so with this one, I wanted to bring in what's already been discussed a little, and we did more of the, the students participated in the simulation, just to remind them where this computer is coming from and what each of those dots on that simulation are representing. And so, we'd already done simulation for a while, but we hadn't done a hands-on tactile one. And so I made cards for them that they then shuffled and passed out to the 2 groups, and they put up their dots, and we got to compare the classes simulation, which wasn't anywhere near or quick as doing, 1,000 that the computer can do so quickly. But it was really good for the students to remember where the data was coming from and what each dot was representing. And when you were talking about that p-value, that likelihood of seeing this sample or more extreme, what that really meant in terms of if it had just been assigned by chance. I think they forget that they're taking the outcomes that came from the experiment, and that simulation is, shuffling them around to, if it wasn't due to the association or it wasn't due to the touch of the computer.
Just a reminder.
Sorry.
Tonight at 7. Please, support the red stick. Be there, Shadow Bell Hall.
But so that was the main difference with mine, is that they've just done a lot of simulation, but not the tactile. And so I love this activity because it took us, after we'd done lots of different, studies and tests, to bring it back so that they could see again, well, where is this data coming from? Why are we doing what we're doing? And I think it helps with my students' understanding.
Wonderful. I'm certainly a big proponent myself of the tactile, and just feel like, it's so easy to forget that when the students are seeing it for the first time, if you're not reinforcing it and if you're not connecting it. And I really think, everybody learns different, but I do think that we often, especially in the math classroom, ignore the kinesthetic, aspect of learning, right? And so I think just making that connection, I've always just been, it's always been just exciting to me with this, that simulation allows us to connect so naturally to that kinesthetic mode of learning. Any other comments from panelists or mentors or questions for Laura?
I would just add again that this idea of going to the computer and simulating, to me, that whole idea was brand new the whole time I taught the course. And I was just amazed at how quickly, they commented on, students and being able to do the technologies or whatever, They struggled or pushed back a little bit, but it was definitely a learning experience for the whole group that, they could figure it out, and they were more than happy to share and talk with the other people. My classroom set up kind of in pods, they're with 3 people, and every day they're working with a different set of students and stuff. And it was good to have that technology that kind of gave them a reason to talk to one another.
That's great.
I just had a question about that, about like how the technology gave them a reason to talk to one another. Do you think it's because they were like getting similar or different answers? Like there was, I don't know, sometimes when I've taught, it's been like, okay, I got this. Okay, I got this. There isn't really a rich discussion. Like, what do you think that you did that, or the task or the way your classroom is set up? What do you think that like prompted them to actually like talk to each other in a meaningful way?
Not sure it was meaningful. It was to help them learn how to use or what buttons they were clicking. So I don't know that there was a lot of discussion about, their outcomes, but how did they get to their outcome? So that was the discussion that was going on, how to use the technology so that then they could, get their analysis. Because, the simulations, those conversations weren't going to be a whole lot different, because they had theirs that they were doing simultaneously with mine. And so that we were already seeing there was slightly different so that they could see that simulation was going to be different than the theoretical, so that they could talk about then, well, what are the validity conditions so that the theoretical, can come into play instead of just this, idea of this is our sampling distribution and how likely are we seeing our sample, based on that idea.
Yeah. So that's good to know that they can kind of like support each other in figuring out technology too. It's not all on you running around the room trying to show them where they click. Yeah. That's great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll go on to question 5. Nellie, after you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about how students responded to the activity in your classroom.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nellie Gopal, and I teach statistics up at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff. And I'm not really looking forward to snow unless it gets us like a snow day or it melts really quickly. And ours does really melt. We're up high. We're at 7,000 feet. So anyway, getting off topic. Yeah, it's cold here too. But and the lesson I also did the robot, the 2-proportion comparison with this robot context. So if you are unfamiliar, or just to refresh all our memories, in this activity, the analysis is to compare the proportion of students that comply with a request who were counseled by a robot, like career counseled by a robot, versus the proportion of students who complied with a request that were counseled by a robot and also like non-threateningly touched by that robot. Like they received like a nice little hand pat during the counseling session. And how do I think students responded? I think you guys might have to cut me off. It was so great. I just cannot say enough good things about this lesson. I felt so fortunate to have like chosen this one. The students loved it. It's a funny topic in a way. Like thinking about a robot touching you. and every time I would like let my voice be like non-threateningly touch it, it only added to like the humor in the room. I think Laura in her materials, like there's a video of a robot doing a session. So we watched a robot like counsel college students for like 2 minutes. And it's just comical, but it's also very relevant nowadays, right? AI is, getting more and more prevalent. Robots and artificial intelligence is doing more. So it's funny and it's relevant and it's important. And I told Laura in our debrief, I said, I think I got to cheat a little bit because I showed this in it's an intro statistics class for non-math majors, but it's STEM students. And I had an honors class that I did this in. So they're very science oriented. I had a lot of medical, pre-med, pre-vet, pre-anesthesia type of students. And like the more, like they want their good grades kind of students. So they enjoyed the class. I felt like the class, we had a good vibe anyway. I did this as my last lesson of this whole semester. It was fantastic. It was a great way to end the semester. I felt like I could use like the first page of like background stuff to reinforce, like review, like remember what is the response variable kind of stuff. So it was a really nice way to review without being like definition, that kind of thing. In our class, we teach inference through simulation, through the Wiley, like through the LOC, like not method, but through the Wiley book and the LOC 5 data set. So they're used to doing a lot of simulation. They've done that through the Wiley websites already, but we don't show, it's not in our like curriculum to teach true proportional inference through formulas. So this was also something I could do as to like bridge the gap. Like, yes, let's do some simulation, but And oh, by the way, this is what it's about. This is what's going on in the background. And I don't know, I like I said, I can't say enough good things about how happy I was with this lesson. I did have them like shuffle cards. I did feel like that, if I had to say like what was one difficult thing, is I thought this could make for like easy shuffling, and it really doesn't. Like I just made it out of it's not even cardstock, it's just like different colored paper, and this doesn't shuffle well, so for next time. So they kind of shuffled their own cards, and then I had them use the Wiley data like website that they already knew to do a lot of simulations. And then what's also really nice about in these materials, so it allows you to like kind of follow up with like talking about relative risk and then even odds risks or odds ratios if you wanted. And so I did have a 75-minute class period with these honor students, so I got to talk a little bit about relative risk, and we did use the Ross applet or the Rossman-Chance applet, and that was completely new to them at that point. And I feel like a few others said, like, you know, like by following the directions that were there, like you know, it went okay, it went fine. They did just fine on it. And again, since they're like science-oriented type students, talking about relative risk, I felt like for a lot of them, they seemed interested. A lot of them were nodding along, and even those, you know, that may not be going into the health field, I could sell it like, you know, your doctor might one day talk to you about your risk of a disease or your odds ratio. And so, yeah, I would encourage, I don't know, I hear my plug, and it's not even my data, but if you haven't done the robot lesson plan, take a look at it. It's so fun. It is so fun. And I don't mean that in against any other lesson, but I feel so great about it. I loved it. They loved it.
That's wonderful. Thank you for your thoughts, Nellie. That was great. Yeah, and maybe, you know, I know for sometimes when I do a couple of the examples, you know, those students come back 2 years later, I'll see them on campus. I'll be like, oh, I remember that one, you know, and it's like, I hope when they do that, that's also showing not only do they remember that exciting context, but that shows that there's some deep learning going on about, you know, the simulation and the understanding about data too. And so that's wonderful. I think what we'll do is we'll jump on to challenges at this point. I know we've got a couple more of our EAPO scholars to talk about challenges, but I'd welcome any of the rest of you. I know some of you kind of hinted at that as you went. And so with no further ado, why don't we start with Zainab, and then Pat, you can go after that.
Hi, my name is Zainab Mohammed. I'm teaching Introduction to Statistics at Oberlin College. This is my second year teaching there. We are using the Unlock of the Power Data book, and it has its like the applet stat key, they call it stat key. But actually, since I'm coming from, when I was a TA, I used the book of Introduction of Statistical Investigation, and I was used to the applet. So from the beginning, I introduced the applet for them in the regression part, and they like it because they have the advantage of this on the stat key. For example, it's like the movable line that they can see, and they can see the squares like calculating, and this has a benefit for them, like understanding what exactly is going on. So, and then I get back to the applet in the ANOVA part. Actually, I forgot to say that for my module, I have the comparison between multiple means. And I used to teach that course. I used to teach that topic, or I did this last year, where I started with partitioning the variability. But this time I used the Todd. Thanks for the presentation. I used the way that Todd has in the structure that he has in the classroom, and it actually works very well. I also feel that printing the worksheet, so usually I'm lecturing 3 days, 50 minutes, and 1 day is group work. Like I give them the worksheet and they do the worksheet together in groups. But this time I hand them the worksheet, and we did the worksheet together while I was lecturing. They like it very much. and they felt that they have more, like we have more discussion and more discussions in group. The thing that, oh my God, like it was really, I had the very, and I feel that Todd has the same problem, like having the simulation, visualizing the simulation and mixing the data together and then split them again, like getting them to visualize how the simulation work was very tedious for me to do the shuffling in the PowerPoint, but it was very nice in the visualization part in the applet. Like it's very easy. Like I don't have to, if I will present for them 3 examples, I don't have to shuffle 3 times or create 3 different presentation slides. So the applet is doing this, and it's really an advantage, and I like it. For challenges, I feel that it's not a challenge. It's like a follow-up question. You are talking about that having multiple, or if I have 10 possible comparison, this will increase type 1 error. So what we should do? So giving them a very, like I had to, although some of them I feel that they are lost in the, like what we can do, like the 2 key adjustment or least square differences, or I have to give them just a sip, like we have some solution. Don't worry about this now. But for now, if you understand what do I mean by this, you are doing great. Also for the F statistics. So I know that in the slides, I presented the slide, I didn't modify much, but when I'm introducing any new distribution, I give them an overview. So for example, when I introduce chi-square, this is a right tail distribution. It's fully characterized with 1 degree of freedom. When I came to the F distribution, okay, this is the F ratio, but you didn't talk about the F distribution yet. So I just like follow up after this and give them, okay, this is now fully characterized by 2 degrees of freedom, the first one coming from the numerator, the second one coming from the denominator. So just a little bit of, their question was very helpful because they mean that we understand this point and we need an extra mile. So I found their questions after the class, which I took it for 2 days. It was very helpful, and it's an indication that they understand it and that these challenges is reasonable because they want to know what's the next step.
That's wonderful to hear. And yeah, that they can anticipate those next things, like you said, really does, I think you're absolutely right, underscore understanding. That's wonderful. Well, Pat, we'll turn it over to you. Tell us a little bit about what you did, how you implemented, and then we'll open it up for sort of Q&A for Pat and Zaida, but also for everybody. Take it away, Pat. You're muted at the moment.
Okay, so I'm Pat Buchanan. I'm from Penn State. The class I use it in, I have a class of about 35 from the College of Ag, so they're kind of very savvy and smart, and like to learn. So I did the comparing more than 2 means and definitely needed 2 days to get through that. The class before they did comparing 2 means, and I did use the tactile at that time. I also used the applet for the sleep deprived one that you have in there, and that. So I thought when we got to this, it would be a good launch. But I think part of it was strategically what I did. I had a Canvas thing open that they had text boxes. So in their groups, they would have to write stuff as they work through it, and that may have slowed them down. We had a 50-minute, another class rushing in. So, they understand the difference in 2 means. They didn't have anything with proportions. But I think the mean group difference idea was something that it took them a while to wrap around their head. And we had 4 groups. And so I'm wondering if maybe 3 might have been better. I tried to then have them like put the means in a table and the opposite value, and like kind of think, okay, with the average and do that. But, it was new for me. Even though I've done this simulation a lot. They understand the p-value from what we did before. From your applets are phenomenal, and they had a lot of that. But that was a sticking point. And then it just kind of like I got them to the end, and then about cause and effect and can you generalize, and then they all had to run out of the room. So I really had to kind of do damage control a little bit in the second class. I I brought in then a second example, which is another one that you have in your book. It's the one about Parkinson's disease. So it was actually has a similar thing. This one, I think the response variable being the percent change in brain volume was a little hard for them to really understand, particularly then when you're looking at the confidence intervals for the differences. So I think that's where we had a little time in talking about practical importance, which we actually had done. So I mean, in the end, I think they were good. I mean, they learned. I use actually the Dick DeVoe book, so they understood modeling in R squared descriptively. So some of that building the ANOVA table actually went. So we and that. So I think in the end they were satisfied. But maybe I think it was me. It's the first time ever. I mean, I've taught this this group mean difference. So I mean, I think I might even try it next time with my second apply level class and just see it. But I didn't think I would have time to do tactile with that based on the day that we did it. But they do work in groups in every class. We use the immediate feedback scratch cards and stuff like that. So they're well working groups, and active learning is not foreign to them. So I mean, obviously next time I'll allow tweaks to make it better. But it was fun to actually teach something that I never had done before. So I enjoyed it very much.
It's good it's always good to push ourselves out of our comfort zone. I've got a list of things like that too. Like, oof, will I do that someday? I don't know. Anyway, thanks so much for sharing. So, specifically questions to either of our panelists for this question, but really any of our panelists or anyone else want to share, mentors, panelists, as we sort of wind down our time here together.
I'll ask a question of everybody. So if you have another faculty member who's thinking of doing one of these activities for the first time, what's the first piece of advice you would give them?
My advice would be try it. Sometimes it messes up and it doesn't work, and sometimes it does, and you learn from not having it work sometimes, and your students always enjoy whatever you do. So I just think try something and see what happens. I always found it works though. But
I was
I'm
gonna say, I was gonna say to prepare well for it, because it can work so well, and it's a really if by happenstance things don't work out, that's one thing. But if it doesn't work out because you didn't prepare for a little aspect in a certain way, you've lost a really great opportunity to hook them, show the importance, show the relevance, and bring in intuition in a really fun lesson. So to do your part so that you have its full potential when you teach it.
I am actually planning on sending an email right after this presentation to my team. And I noticed that you still have open registration. Unfortunately, I cannot do it over the spring. I honestly wanted to go over the stuff that I did last year and this year, tweak a little bit to reuse them instead of trying something new. So this is my goal. There are 2 activities that I did, and I would like to actually, redo them again in class. I will tell them to, well, I was a little interested with the robot thing, so I was checking it right now, and I went into Desmond's classroom that needs a code. So, so maybe Laura, you'll be hearing from me. I will tell them to try it. Everything is aligned with what we teach. We teach the same thing. We all teach statistics. We teach, two proportion, two mean. And it's good for them to try something new. It's lovely. It's more exciting for the instructor than the student. Of course, the student, they're waiting for what we give them, but it's exciting to try something new. The topics, the experience, the activities you're doing, they're fun. They're really out of the box from what we do all the time. And it's just, it just changes it exciting. That's what I personally think. That's why I like to do it again and again, but I'm taking a break again to just, work on the stuff that I already did in the past two semesters.
When you first posed the question, the first thing that came to my mind was just do it. because I was so hesitant to try because I'm not a statistician. I had one stats class in my math major, and that was in the 1980s. So I've been teaching stats because we're a small department. And so I just felt really nervous about doing it. But now that I have stepped into this world, I wish I had done it sooner because I've enjoyed it so much and learned so much. So I would just say, just do it. And I think the first time I did it, I was so excited that I just talked a lot. And I think having everything typed out for me, I was excited and nervous. And in both those scenarios, I talk a lot. So that was a double whammy for me. So having it typed out, I had some typed out ahead of time, but I really went back and completely typed everything out so that it would slow me down and it would give me a place to land if I kind of got off track or if I lost a little confidence or whatever. I had a very good firm foundation for these first few times that I did it, so that I gave myself every chance of it going well in that case. So, but I wish, like I said, I wish I'd done it sooner. So that's why I say just do it.
I wanted to reiterate with that is just do it, but also realize you only have to do something. You don't have to do like, you don't have to change your whole course. You can do just one thing, do one, and keep the rest of your class the way you want it. But it just gives you a chance to try it. You go, oh, that was fun, and then you might try another thing next time or later in the semester. So don't think you have to change your whole course day one.
And they have plenty of time to actually make it. It's still, like it will take time. And in my case, it takes time because I had to, think about it, change words. Like if I just worry about changing the software, that's the only problem that I just don't feel my students are ready enough to work with two softwares at the same time. But I don't know if we have a minute. I have one question. Did any one of you try these applications with an online environment instead of face-to-face? Because I feel it's a little bit more challenging.
Definitely more challenging. I did not try because I didn't teach online this last semester. At least not that class, but it is more challenging.
I'm about to try it this semester, so I can let you know.
Oh, thank you.
And in May term, so I'll do it once this semester, and then I'll do it again in May term. Just a few activities, not the entire course, but just a few of them, so I can definitely get back to you on that.
Thank you.
And we did, I don't know if everyone is aware, but we did a couple of workshops talking about the challenges of doing things online. And yeah, so there's some resources out there, and I'm always happy to help. There's other people here that done a lot of online work, like Laura and Jen, and I'm sure we'll be happy to help.
Yes.
Yeah, so the link I just put in the chat, sorry for a little bit of distraction on the screen while I was getting my ability to put the link in the chat, but that is the link to our main website. And on there are recorded workshops that Annalise was just referencing from November, where we talked about adapting these materials online. We do envision more along those lines coming soon over the next number of months. We also have some of our scholars this spring or this term are really focusing on that question of how do we do simulation-based inference and some of these other pedagogical techniques online. So really would love to hear from those of you who are adapting it that way. And as you do, like Annalise said, please reach out to us for support. That could be through doing the EA Post Scholars Program again. Watch those recorded workshops from November. Or if you have ideas and say, hey, here's where I'm struggling, that can help some of our content coming forward over the next few months. We are envisioning some more workshops here in probably the April timeframe that will have some more specific content about adapting things online. We're also going to do a workshop at US-COTS in Iowa here in July. There will also be a half-day workshop there about adapting your introductory statistics course to teach online. So lots more on the online space coming up, as well as other things. And so we would continue to love to hear from you. A few other quick highlights while we wind down. Still got a few spots open for that spring 2025 EA Post Scholars Program. Link to our website. Let us know. We're just about full, but I anticipate we'll do this again in fall 2025. So, you know, if it doesn't work this time, or you got colleagues or others who want to jump in, please feel free to reach out to us then.
That's right.
Relatedly, yeah, go ahead.
Deadline to if somebody wants to apply for spring.
The sooner the better. We only have a few spots left, so I'd say, you know, try to get it in the next few days to week. But just email me if you have any questions about that at that timing. Relatedly, in terms of communication, we are shifting a lot of our regular updates and things over to a Google group. We'll still use the regular standard email from time to time. But if you're not already in our Google group, we have a lot of people transitioned over. Just email me and I can get you a link there. We've tried to reach out, but I know sometimes things go to spam or whatever. It's actually one of the reasons we're doing this. This allows you a little more control, should be a little better for spam filter protection, that kind of stuff. Big thanks to all of you. I'll just say from my perspective, I've had a chance to work with this awesome group of mentors for a long time. But for all of you EA Post scholars, you know, hearing what you have to say is a really big encouragement. And we're not doing this just to be encouraged, but it isn't a really big encouragement for all of us to hear all this awesome stuff that you're doing and see how the things that we're talking about are really making an impact with the way you teach and making an impact with your students. And that's what we're here to do. So if you have more ideas for content, things you'd like to see, more feedback for us, or if you'd like to host a workshop, we have slots available later in 2025 for in-person regional workshops or into 2026. Don't hesitate to reach out. But with that, again, my email address is on the screen, or you know your mentors and other folks. Great seeing you all here today. I'm going to stop the recording and we'll wind down. Thanks again for spending your Friday afternoon with us and giving your fall to trying new things in statistics.